Good evening. My name is Allison Sullivan. I'm the state representative, but tonight I'm actually going to be the moderator for our annual candidates night, 2022. I know there was a typo in the letter that I sent out, but it is 2022, not 2018, even though some of us want to forget 2020, right? So if I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you all for coming tonight, and for the viewers that are going to be seeing it later on. I'd like to remind everyone that town election will be on Saturday, April 30th, at the Beaverbrook School from 8 to 6. If you're unable to get to town election on Saturday the 30th, absentee ballots will be available until the Friday, April 29th at noon at the town clerk's office. If you do have any questions, you can reach Leanne at the town clerk's office at 781-982-2112. So I'm just going to go over the rules a little bit. I did send them out via email in case you did not get them. Each candidate will be given a 2-minute opener. Again, each candidate will be given 2 minutes per each question. Every candidate will get the same question. We will go in the order of which the candidates are sitting, and they'll be sitting based on the way they're listed on the ballot. The second round of questions would obviously go to the second person in line and so forth. And then once the questions are finished, each candidate will get about a 2-minute closer. Everyone understand? Perfect. And we're going to keep this as light and happy as we possibly can, right? We've been through a lot over the last couple of years, so I'm looking forward to it. We're going to start off with our Board of Selectmen, Kevin DiMarzio. Kevin, if you would mind stepping on up. Oh, yes. And if anyone has any ideas for questions, we do have index cards up here. We do have a few people up here reading off the questions just to make sure that they are appropriate, they're not attacking people personally, or attacking any family members. This is all going to be respectful, professional, and on policies. Thank you. Kevin, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You're in the hot seat. So we have a question here. Oh, yep. Yes. Oh, sorry. My apologies.
It's okay.
Right? Your opening statement?
Don't worry. I will be quick. Don't you worry. Good evening. Yes, this is a Kevin DiMarzio public announcement. Good evening. My name is Kevin DiMarzio. I currently serve as your chairman on the Abington Board of Selectmen. I have been on the board for 3 years now. I have loved everything that I've done on the board up until this point, and I'm looking forward to continuing to serve this town for another 3 years. I moved to town roughly 8 years ago. Abington hit every criteria that I was looking for in a community. It especially reminded me of growing up in Braintree. It felt like it had that Braintree feel as from my childhood just now. I am raising 2 children in town, Keegan and Grady. They're both active in sports, so we're bouncing around, whether it's at the hockey rink, the soccer fields, baseball, or whatever else, flag football I can think of. I ran for the Board of Selectmen because I was looking to find ways to improve town, and I felt that I had something that I could give to the town. I feel that I have given a lot, and I feel that I still have more to give. There's been a lot of work we've done over the last 3 years, and I'm looking forward to being able to serve for another 3 years. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I almost forgot to give you your opening statement.
It's all right.
So we do have a list of questions here. You'll be on the hot seat for a few minutes. The first question is, why are our roads so bad? In such bad shape, and how would you work to resolve that issue if elected?
So the DPW does have a list of road conditions, and I know they update it every single year, so roads move up and down. In a small town like this, though, we don't have a lot of Chapter 90 funding, so it does complicate things. Along with projects or emergency projects that go on throughout the year in the town, it's tough because there's not a lot of money to improve the roads. This year at town meeting, we did vote. We had money in the budget to actually do roads, so the town invested money as well. And this is the only way I think that we're going to get ahead on these roads in order to do this. But we really have to look at this, and the DPW and John Stone does a really good job of keeping up with the roads and everything they do. But we have to find ways to maintain them and to repave the roads, because they do fall into disrepair, and it's going to cost us more money. Getting on the state tip list for other projects like the rotary that is planned up at Hancock and Chestnut is a huge thing that's going to save the town millions of dollars. In different projects like that, I know John Stone has worked with grants, but we need to find every possible way to do that and keep up with the roads.
Awesome, thank you. So with the rise of social media, how do you try to combat incorrect information that is put on Facebook or Twitter or any other social media outlet?
So social media is really, came onto the scene, and there's multiple platforms now. So it does bring a kind of a hard angle, because, you get on there and you want to respond to stuff, and there is misinformation, and you try to correct it as best you can. Through the past couple of years in the town, we have a town social media site, and we've tried to, as a board, not necessarily get into a contest on a Facebook page or a social media page. Just try to put out one statement with the correct factual information, and let the residents know, listen, this is where you need to go for the information that's factual, again, without getting into a back and forth on a private social media page, because again, nothing ever comes out of that, and it just kind of wastes everyone's time when it's the correct information needs to be out there. We've also, I pushed for a while back town emails. It was kind of a little inconsistent, but our website does now have links, and all of the selectmen have town email addresses. So that's another way that, right at the top of my page, I put my contact, so they can contact me directly to my town website, the town website email, so I can talk with people directly, and that gives another avenue to give clear information and correct information.
Does the Board of Selectmen as a whole, as a follow-up question, have a Facebook or social media official page?
Not the Board of Selectmen, but the town of Abington.
Perfect, thank you. Another question is, transparency is important to voters. What does being transparent mean to you?
So again, being transparent is as the process goes, whatever we're dealing with as a board, or if I'm on a subcommittee, is getting that correct factual information again, and getting as much as we can to the residents. A lot of things that you run into, sometimes the hurdles are that certain information can't be out there yet, or there's certain things, and sometimes people want to know more that we can't give them at the moment, which is tough. So trying to have that balancing act, but transparency is basically giving the correct information, getting out there and responding to people. If someone asks you a question, respond to it. Getting out there, meeting with people, making sure you're returning phone calls, talking to people, just overall being transparent. The town website was updated, or it's just about done updating, which has a lot of information, and it's easier to navigate now. So there's another emphasis from the town, is trying to put more information on there and make it accessible to the residents. Just multiple things, but.
Perfect. Thank you. So we do have two more questions. Is there a town department that you believe is underfunded? If so, what is your plan to increase funding?
So I guess the question is kind of a multiple. I think one department that was, I guess you could say, underfunded, but it's due to turnover or whatnot, is the police department. That is something that we've been working, the town's been working to build the force back up. They've been down so many over the years, and with everything else, it's just building that department back up. So that's one area where the town has to find money and be able to invest in it, because that's a long-term investment for us, and it's going to pay dividends for every single resident in town. As far as underfunded, I guess the other side would be the DPW. I still feel I've been an advocate for the DPW for many years. You know, they have summer help, they have interns, other things, but they need more help, and they need more money to do what they need to do. We had 2 street sweepers, one broke, it was like 100 years old, we finally got a new one, but just everything revolves around, I swear the DPW is the one that could fix every problem in town, between the baseball fields, the streets, the grass, the trees, whatever it is, so I really feel,
potholes.
yeah, the potholes, just everything.
Everyone knows about the potholes, right? But DPW does do a great job. John
Yes.
does do a good job at that. So the final question is, in appointing citizens to committees, what qualifications will you look for?
So when someone runs or puts in for a committee, I like to look, qualifications are great. I think that's a huge part to this, because you come in with the basis of knowledge. But the other avenue that I like to look at is and I've said it, and there's someone in this audience that's running tonight, get involved. So to me, as someone comes across, qualifications are a huge part to it, but also just that person is willing to donate or spend their free time helping the town. So I look at it more as that, you know, if someone's not on a board yet and they're new to town and it's a new face, I want to put them on that board. They can learn it. There's other people that are on that board or committee that can help them grow. We have training sessions that we've done with, you know, open meeting law and everything else. So I don't necessarily focus on the qualifications as more as just someone is willing to help out and get involved in town. So that's a huge thing for me.
Great answer. Now you'll get 2 minutes for your closing statement.
I'll be about 3 seconds. I humbly ask for your vote on Saturday, April 30th. Thank you. Who's counting?
Thank you, Kevin. Next up, we're going to take the school committee. So if we can have Danielle and Nicole both come up. Danielle would sit first, and then Nicole. Thank you.
Hi, Nicole.
Good evening, ladies.
Hello.
So like I said, both of you will get the opportunity to do a 2-minute opener. Danielle, if you'd like to go first.
Sure, if it's okay, I'm going to read from my paper so I don't forget things. When Kevin interviewed me last week, I was a hot mess, so I figured I'd be a little more collected with my thoughts. Those of you who know me well know that I don't have a huge social media presence. I rarely post, and the thought of campaigning gives me hives. However, I've enjoyed and valued the past 3 years serving our community as a member of the Abington School Committee so much that I'm here to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me and reintroduce myself to those of you who do. Public education is part of who I am, part of my soul. I've spent almost my entire life, 39 of my 43 years, in public schools. I'm a graduate of the Weymouth Public School System. I received my bachelor's degree from UMass Amherst and my master's degree in educational leadership from Bridgewater State. And after graduating from UMass Amherst, 3 days later, I started my high school teaching career in public schools and never left. I've been there for the past 22 years, teaching high school. I take courses, attend workshops wherever I can, join any committee who will have me, and talk shop with anybody who will listen. Public schools have been a huge part of my life. I have also chosen Abington Public Schools for my own kids. I have 3 boys, 1 at Abington High School and 2 at Abington Middle School. I am so proud of our community and our public schools. My kids are happy here. This is their home. I believe that the success of our schools depends on the adults in our community getting involved and supporting them in any way that we can. So I spend my time doing whatever I can to do my part. I volunteered in classrooms, chaperoned field trips, coached teams, served on PTOs, been a longtime member of the Abington Education Foundation, and for the past 3 years worked really hard to make Abington Public Schools the best they can possibly be for all of our kids. I'm really proud, so very proud of the committee members and all of the work that we've done. If you've had the chance to listen or attend meetings, I hope you've heard and felt my passion and commitment to our schools when I ask questions, offer comments, and suggest new initiatives and volunteer for whatever is needed. I hope that you've seen that my training in both teaching and administration and my experience as a mom give me a very balanced perspective of what challenges and opportunities Abington schools will face over the next 3 years. I hope that I can continue on for another term. My work is not done yet. Thank you.
Well, that was very quick. even for a Bostonian. So thank you for
Sorry.
that. So the bell is just kind of let you know that we've hit the 2-minute mark. Don't feel that you have to rush through it. As long as you don't go on for another 5 minutes, we will be okay. So Nicole, you're next.
I'm also going to read from a sheet because I don't do very well with speaking on the fly. So first, I'd like to thank the RTC for hosting this event. I appreciate your efforts in getting us here tonight so that people can better understand who we are as candidates. My name is Nicole Emery, and I've been a resident of Abington for 8 years. I was born and raised in Rockland, a graduate of Rockland High School. I know I'm in Abington, so don't hold that against me. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, both from UConn Stores, one in psychology, one in nursing. I am currently a registered nurse at a Boston hospital. I work in an oncology unit with palliative end-of-life overflow. I work nights, so if you've ever worked nights, you know we are a special breed of people. My husband is a property manager in Boston. Spanish is his primary language, so our home is bilingual, though I can't personally claim to be yet. I'm still learning from him and my children. I have 4 small kids. My 7-year-old daughter is in 1st grade at Beaverbrook. My 5-year-old son is in pre-K and will start kindergarten in the fall. And my 3.5-year-old son currently attends a specialized program full-time with hopes of starting him in Abington pre-K and special ed in the fall. I also have an 8-month-old daughter. My kids are still very young, so I don't have a long list of all the things that I've become involved in yet, but I do look forward to getting more and more involved and being a very present parent in this town. I have a passion for advocating not only for my own children, but all children. As a special needs mom, my son has autism. I know how important it is that our schools are supporting and educating each student as an individual. As a nurse, I'm a problem solver, a critical thinker. I know how to work effectively under pressure and as a team player. I know how to work with and listen to people of all different backgrounds, varying positions, and with varying positions on controversial issues. I take my seriously and would vow to make decisions that benefit all our kids and all the students in the district. I hope to bring to our school committee a new background, a different perspective, and a common sense approach when dealing with issues, and I hope that everyone is able to make it out vote on the 30th.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. So we do have several questions, and the way the order is going to be is we're going to start with you first, Danielle, and then go over to Nicole as well. Thank you, Alex. So the first question is, if the pandemic increases and the CDC and MA state health boards require actions such as mask wearing, staying distance from others, vaccinations, what will you do as a member of your committee?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's been a tough 2 years. Had we taken a vote, I would have been pro-choice for parents to decide what they were going to do with their kids regarding masking. But I am also, I follow what the CDC and the Department of Education has sent down for us to follow. So if nothing changed as of now and the situation stayed the same, I am for keeping the masks off. I'd have to see what happens with numbers and with the severity of any new strains. But as of right now, I believe that parents should have the choice.
Thank you. Nicole? If you need me to repeat it, I can. Okay, sure. If the pandemic increases and the CDC and MA state health boards requires action such as mask wearing, staying distance from others, vaccinations, what will you do as a member of your committee?
I know a lot of those things came down from DESE, but within our own district, if the decision was left to us, I would never support mandating any vaccines, certainly not masks. I think that that is definitely something that should be left up to parents and for families to choose. I'm a nurse. I understand the impact of health and sickness, but I also understand mental health impact, and I think that we learned a lot over the last 2 years, and I wouldn't support that and would do what I could to kind of push back if that were to happen again.
Thank you. So next question, Nicole, you will answer first, is if elected to school committee, what changes, if any, would you like to see within the schools and beyond?
So a few changes I would like to see. I would support and look into potentially offering Portuguese as a second language in our district. I think it could really benefit our town, given our English learner students and their classmates. I've also heard from parents, I'm a mother of young kids, so I've heard from parents that have expressed interest in expanding or making the hours of pre-K, the sessions of pre-K a little bit longer. So looking into that, and make access to like reviewing and seeing what the curriculums are for each grade easier for parents, making it easier for them to access it.
Thank you. Danielle, do you need me to read the question again?
Just a refresher. Thank
Sure. If elected to the school committee, what changes, if any, would you like to see within the schools and beyond?
One thing that I've always, well, not always, but since I've sat for school committee and in being able to, our superintendent is very approachable, so I found myself in his office a lot before school committee. One of the things that I've always been interested in is getting a rotating schedule at the high school. I know that staffing issues and school start times have prevented us from doing that, but that's still on the back burner, something that I'm always trying to see if we can get. I've been pushing for financial literacy graduation requirements for all students. Interviewing skills taught to all graduates, whether it's for college or for the workplace. Career seminars for our students and parents to let them know what options are out there. Trades in addition to colleges and not just the four-year colleges, all of the options that are out there for two-year schools, four-year schools, and beyond. I'd like to still continue to push for the continuous review of curriculum at all levels, evaluate the rigor in all our courses and classrooms so that we're challenging all kids at all levels. And I think most importantly, after the past 2 years, we need to make sure that we give teachers time to adjust to any new initiatives. Our students are struggling as they have gotten back into the classroom, and we really need to make sure that we make time to the most important focus, flat out, is students need to remember how to be students again, and we need to give teachers the time and the grace to help them remember what being a student is.
Thank you. So Danielle, this question will start with you. Parents have been raising concerns regarding in-school bullying. As a school committee member, how would you address these concerns to ensure every student feels safe and welcome in his or her school?
As a teacher, we're trained to keep an eye out for all of the little whisperings that go on in the classrooms. So every teacher is actively listening, whether we hear everything or not. I guess depends on where we are in the classroom and what we're seeing. Bullying is definitely not anything that any of us would tolerate. It's important to make sure that any accusations are taken seriously and investigated immediately. Important to take a look at both sides. Kids are volatile and emotions fly, so definitely making sure that before any decisions are made, that the bullying is taken seriously, and at the same time, both sides are investigated. Get all the facts.
Thank you. Nicole, do you want me to repeat it, or do you?
Sure.
Parents have been raising concerns regarding in-school bullying. As a school committee member, how would you address these concerns to ensure every student feels safe and welcome in his or her school?
So I think listening to what the teachers are saying is important, and serving kind of in between what parents are coming to us and saying is happening, and listening to the teachers, seeing what they're seeing, reviewing our policies that we have in place regarding that, making sure that everything is how it should be, changing what needs to be changed. As times change, things change. Everything's always evolving. So I think that's an important piece of that. But I think really our teachers are the eyes and ears and the student, like in the classroom when it comes to that. So really, I think that they would be the best resource to go to for things like that.
Thank you. Okay, so we have another question. I believe we still have some time. Perfect. All right, so Nicole, this question is going to start with you. COVID pandemic has impacted students over the last 2 years. What do you think we have learned, and what would you do differently?
Okay, I can't remember if I already addressed this or not with my last COVID response, but from a nursing perspective, I've seen how the mental health of people, especially our kids, have been affected. I think we've learned that isolation and spending long hours on a computer was not in the best interest of our kids. So if we were to ever find ourselves amidst another pandemic, or in the fall, if we were kind of going back to where we were once before, I think that we've learned that keeping our kids in school is really most important, and really focusing on allowing parents to let us know what's best for their kids when it comes to education, whether that means they have to do what's best regarding education, if that's homeschooling, whatever, but leaving a lot of decisions in their hands. But I think making sure our kids stay in school.
Thank you. Danielle?
If you can just repeat it. one more
Sure,
time.
definitely.
Thank you.
COVID pandemic has impacted students over the last 2 years, and teachers. What would you think we have learned? What do you think we have learned, and what would you do differently?
Okay, so what we've learned for sure, and I'm going to agree with everything that Nicole said, is that kids need to be in school. There is no substitute for the time they spend with their teachers and their peers in the classroom. Like I said before, in the answer to one of the previous questions, right now the biggest struggle in the classroom is for kids to remember what it is to be a learner. Teachers are dealing with all kinds of behaviors that weren't learned. An example that I would give is my current 9th graders. There's a little meme, or I don't know, little saying out there that if your current 9th grader, for example, if your student is a current 9th grader, the last time that they actually had a full year of normal school was when they were in 6th grade, and missing out on 2 years, whether it be a full year or a partial year, on being in a classroom and learning what it means to sit and be a student, and the learning strategies, the socialization. It was a huge loss, and I would say even after a year, we still aren't there with getting them back to where they would have been. So for sure what we've learned is that, I guess in a really good way for teachers, is that the internet just is no substitute for the teachers that are out there. What we would do differently, again, it's a shame that all of this happened. I wish we could go back and it didn't happen. I think for sure the online learning, the model that we had, it didn't work like we had hoped it would work for the students. Everything was thought through. It wasn't that it was rushed. It was just that the cliche is that we were flying the plane while we were building it, and it was true, and everybody poured their heart and their soul into what we were doing. I think I would go back to the drawing table and come up with something better than what we came up with, but I am proud of the work that the committee did. The administration didn't sleep. They didn't get a day off, and I would say I would throw it all out, and knowing what we know now, try something different.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Danielle, this question's for you to start off with. What is your position on CRT, critical race theory, in our schools?
It is not taught in our schools, and I'm going to say that I'm going to stop there.
Okay. Nicole?
For CRT, I know that disparities exist, and I know it's important that we teach our kids equality and inequalities, and that those exist, and that when it comes to all things race, sex, religion, whatever, that everybody's equal. So I think teaching kids to be accepting and inclusive and embedding that in our education is important. I'm not totally familiar with all the tenets of CRT, but I know I don't agree with all of them. Like Danielle said, it's not in our schools, but I think that we do need to teach kids that there are disparities and the inequalities, so they are teaching them to be inclusive, but kind of where I stand on that.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so Nicole, this question's for you. I think we still have some time. All right, so this will be, I think, the final question here. What are the most important issues facing the Abington schools?
So I think right now, we are still continuing to recover from the impact the last 2 years have had on our students, the mental health. I think that's going to continue to be an issue. I think it was such a huge impact that we're going to have to still deal with that until our kids have recovered from that. We had some really big changes, and so I think that's going to be an ongoing issue. I do think we'll also continue to see an increase in the number of students we have, so trying to continue to keep class sizes to what they should be, ratios, ensuring staff isn't reduced, and addressing budget issues. I also think, while it's not an issue in a bad way, but I think we'll continue to see an increase in our English learner students, so making sure that as that increases, we're addressing what we need to be doing so that they get a proper education. The teachers can also have the resources they need for the EL learners as those numbers increase within their classrooms.
Thank you. And Danielle?
I'm going to echo on at least two of those. The continuing growth in the English language learner population. We are addressing that by adding some positions and just making sure that we continue to support them. Also, when we think about capital issues, there are things that we have on our list for now, but the growing number of students in the Abington Public Schools will for sure cause some space issues in some of the schools. So keeping an eye on the numbers, class sizes, and also just the space that we have within the buildings. Would there potentially be the need for reconfiguring where the grades are in what schools, or the need down the road, hopefully not anytime soon, for a new building. Continuing to evaluate the rigor in all of our courses. We've implemented some new curriculum, making sure that it works and that we give the teachers time to adjust to it, get used to it, to figure out what works, what doesn't work before we throw anything new at them, while also making sure that as we're reviewing that curriculum, we're keeping it appropriate for all of the kids at all their levels while still challenging them.
Thank you. So that wraps up the questions. So we will go into your closing remarks. Typically what we would do is the opposite, but it's completely okay if Danielle, if you want to go first, and then Nicole, or if Nicole would like to go first. I'll leave it up to you.
I can read. I'll go first.
Perfect.
So again, thank you for having me here tonight and allowing me to give some insight about myself. Being that my kids are still young, I know, I think I said this, I don't have all the involvement in the various sports and programs and other things that some of the other committee members might be in, but I hope to become more involved as my kids do get older. I'm sure, just as many members before me have started, I'm doing this because I am a dedicated and committed parent, and advocate wanting to be an advocate wanting to be involved in making sure our kids receive the best education they can. I'm a parent who's committed to making hard decisions, making important decisions that might mean changes in our school. Having 4 very young kids, I've invested interest in a long way to go with Abington Public Schools, and if I keep having kids, it'll just keep increasing that. I do believe our current school committee has a lot of really great members. I think they work really hard. I think it could use a little bit of change, but I think they do a really great job. I think I would like to see our committee just have a more diverse perspective that truly represents varying ideas in our town, and not just more one side or the other. I think we'll see, as the years go on, some potentially big changes in public education, and I hope to see some more members that will kind of question things a little bit more, and when something doesn't feel right for our district, maybe challenge that. I think it's also so incredibly important that we protect the parental involvement in our kids' education. We'd be sure to make sure parents feel welcome and heard and listen to their concerns. I'm ready to make the commitment this town needs for our children, and I hope to earn your vote for school committee on the 30th.
Thank you.
I'm just going to repeat part of what I had said before because I got most of everything out in that 2 minutes. I just wanted to reiterate that I'm really proud of the committee members and the work we've done. I feel like we have a very representative group. that hits the needs of the community that we have been elected to represent. Like I said, if you've had the chance to listen or attend meetings, I hope that you've heard and felt that passion and the commitment to the schools. I do ask questions, I offer comments, I've suggested new initiatives, I've volunteered for whatever is needed, served on many committees. I hope that you've seen that my training in both teaching and administration and my experience as a mom have given me that unique perspective, a balanced perspective of what challenges and opportunities are facing Abington schools over the next 3 years. And I hope that I have earned your trust and respect so that I can continue on for another term, because like I said before, I have a long list and my work is not done yet. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Great job. Thank you. Great job. So up next, we're going to have the Board of Public Health, Aaron Christian, Jamie Pinola. Is that how he's? Yes, I was like going to say, I'm scanning the room. And then Catherine Van Est. Perfect. Thank you.
Am I at this end? Yes. Okay.
I just know I'm in the middle.
Thank you all for being here. We're going to start with opening statements like we've done the last two. Well, the last one, I should say, because the last one had more than one. We're going to start with Aaron, then Jamie, then Catherine.
Katie, please.
Sorry, Katie. Okay, sorry about that. Katie.
I don't go by Catherine.
You'll see Catherine on the ballot, but she'll go by Katie. Perfect.
Thank you, Allison, the Republican Town Committee, Abington CAM, and the residents of Abington who joined us here this evening. My name is Aaron Christian. I am running for re-election to another 3-year term on the Abington Board of Health. Public health is defined by the World Health Organization as the art and science of preventing disease, prolonging life, and promoting the health through the organized efforts of society. And what a better time to see that definition in action than we have these past 3 years. It's been an honor to serve on the Board of Health during this time, and even more so to serve as the chair for the past year. And as we begin to navigate a post-pandemic world, we need a board familiar with the role of the Board of Health. I've taken the time to learn and grow as an elected public health official and have personally adopted the mission of the Abington Board of Health to preserve, protect, promote the health and well-being of all residents. While the Board of Health is limited in scope in the actions we can take, we can, through the skills and the passion all members bring to the board, be an integral part of a healthy community. I hope to be able to continue bringing the same enthusiasm and passion for public health and can continue promoting, preserving, and protecting the health and well-being of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Jamie, you can go next.
Thanks for having me here tonight. My name is Jamie Pinola. I moved to Abington about 5 years ago. I have 6 children in the school system. My mother and mother-in-law also live in Abington. The first half of my career, I worked as a legal secretary for a Boston law firm, and for the last 17 years, I've been a office manager / HR manager for another Boston law firm. I handled all payroll, retirement accounts, insurance policies, bank accounts and loans, client billing and collections, insurance audits. I was the main contact for all state and federal tax agencies. I handled the retirement account tax reporting and filings, and I oversaw all personnel, IT needs, electrical equipment, furniture, software, hardware. I also helped with litigation filings, discovery and trial prep. Although I don't have any history with health, I hope that that speaks that I'm able to learn and handle a lot of responsibilities. That firm was acquired by a larger firm, and at that point I decided I didn't want to continue driving into Boston and having all my children. I wanted to be around more for that, so I declined their offer of employment, and now I help run our family's HVAC business with all the same responsibilities, just at a little less intense level. And I'm really grateful for that because I'm also able to be around my children more. Now that I have the availability, I would like to be more involved in the town. while attending and watching the Board of Health meetings over the past year, it seemed that most members had the same view on a lot of the issues. So I thought the community might like a different view, hopefully. If given the opportunity, I plan to improve our community by approaching my role with a willingness to listen, to learn, and to collaborate. Thanks.
Thank you. And Katie?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Republican Town Committee for organizing this forum as well. I see some familiar faces out there and supporters in the crowd, and after tonight, I hope to have earned some new supporters. My name is Katie Van Nest, and I live at 193 Colonial Road. I have 2 children, Graham, who's 7 and in 2nd grade, and Dylan, who's 5 and in afternoon pre-K at Abington Early Education. My super supportive husband, Justin, is in the audience, and we have been married almost 13 years. We also have a rescue cat, Millie. I'm a nurse, currently employed at Brigham Health, more commonly known as Harbor Medical Associates in the Stetson Building in Weymouth. I graduated from UMass Boston with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing back in 2009. The beginning of my career, I focused in psychiatric nursing and mental health. I've also done some nursing research, community nursing, and specialized in family medicine for the past 5 years. I primarily focus in the urgent care setting now. I love doing IVs and trying to put people at ease when they walk into the clinic, although those 2 things are not easy to do at the same time. In the past few years, I feel my family has really started to plant some roots here in Abington. I'm committed to this community and have enjoyed participating in multiple organizations, including the Abington Celebrates Committee, the PAC 41 Cub Scouts, and I'm a new addition to the Abington Town Choir this year. Fun fact, I was a classical voice major before I zeroed in on nursing. My other hobbies include gardening, family nature walks, and I love baking. I became interested in the Board of Health during the pandemic like so many others, and I really started to pay attention and thought I could bring my clinical background, professionalism, positive attitude, and energy to this position that I'm running for. I hope you will find me to be approachable and vote for me on April 30th.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for the amazing opening statements. So we're going to start off with Aaron for the first question. We're going to go in order. If elected, what would be your top priority?
Really, I'd have 2 top priorities. This is one that I actually ran on 3 years ago, and the pandemic made it difficult to come to fruition, but it's emergency preparedness. I think it's really important, especially now, post-pandemic, to get the community involved and engaged in that activity again. We had, I believe, before the pandemic, the Medical Reserve Corps, which, for those of you who don't know, is a network of volunteers. They're organized locally, and they're charged with improving the health and safety of their communities. So that's something I'd like to see come back and engage the community with that. The second part, and one of my top priorities being the Board of Health, is going to be waste disposal cost reduction. Really, the Board of Health only has so much to do in that area, but I would like to see a formation of Citizens Committee focus on the waste cost reduction, the tonnage reduction specifically, and make sure that we are focused on finding ways to maintain a high level of trash pickup service without increasing the burden on our taxpayers. We already paid 2 overrides on this, and I don't want to see anything of that nature happening again, if we can avoid it. So those are my 2 priorities.
Thank you. Jamie?
Did you ask for 2 or just priority?
Just your priority, your top priority.
Okay. So my top priority is communication and transparency. So, like I said, I don't really have a lot of health background, but I'm excited to learn about what we can do on the Board of Health and make sure that the community is aware of all of the reasons behind the decisions and make sure that there is clear information on meetings, agenda, times, what's happening, why it's happening, how it's happening, and that's all.
Thank you. And Katie?
I agree. It's hard to pick one, but if I had to choose one to focus on as my top priority, for me it would probably be addiction, the opioid crisis, and mental health. It's something I'm already very passionate about. I've dedicated a lot of my nursing career to that. I want to make sure that there's good health equity in this town. I want to make sure that everyone has equal access and opportunity to those resources so that we can really focus on, prevention, support, and not just individuals who are suffering from this, but their families as well. Because I think you really need to knit everybody together so that we can have a lot of success.
Thank you. Okay, so next question, we'll start with Jamie. Are you in favor of the state's plan of imposing a 5-cent deposit on water and nip bottles?
Absolutely, yes, 100%. I think it goes without saying why. It just makes sense. You'd see less of them on the street, but I think it's a great idea, yes.
Katie?
I agree, yes, as well. Actually, over the last couple of days, I've reached out to a lot of the local liquor stores and talked to them because I thought that maybe something about a nip bottle ban might be a question tonight, so I really wanted to educate myself about it. I know that Chelsea was one of the first towns, I think it was the first in Massachusetts, that implemented the ban. And I know our town's a lot smaller though, and I worry, especially after the pandemic, economically, what that did to our local businesses, what it would do to the businesses here. And that was kind of their sentiment. But I really want to eliminate the pollution nuisance. I mean, they're on my street, they're on everyone's street. And I really want to make sure that, that's something that we're cutting down on, the pollution.
Thank you. Aaron?
I am in support of a 5-cent bottle deposit at the state level. I get concerned when we start talking about banning things at the local level. I think especially with nip bottles, if we're going to ban something, for example, we're just pushing the problem to our surrounding communities, making it worse there, and that eventually will just trickle back or not help public health in general. But a 5-cent deposit at the state level, I think, is a better solution, and it's going to especially keep our businesses in the state a lot happier as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Katie, this question's going to start with you first. In recent months, we've seen local officials come under fire during board meetings. How would you balance a right to free speech and running an effective, legal, and efficient meeting?
Absolutely. So I think a big part of that is that everyone is entitled to their opinion. And I think I'm a very approachable person, and therefore I think I'd be a good candidate. I want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. But for certain, I'm a professional at heart. And I think that we need to maintain that with our board meetings, make sure that everybody's voice is heard, but that we're doing it in a professional and respectful manner.
Thank you. Aaron?
We had at a Board of Health meeting, Cheryl Sparrow, who's an attorney for the Massachusetts Health Boards Association. She talked about how public health in of itself is a balancing act. And this type of thing is also a balancing act because we need to balance between this individual freedom and the laws that we need to follow, one of those being the open meeting law. And so one of the things, especially as chair, that I've strived to do is make sure that we are following the open meeting law to the T so that we can run an effective meeting. I know we're talking about hot button issues and difficult things, but there are rules we need to follow. And I think that those guidelines are in place for us to be able to run effective meetings and get our business done. I've taken plenty of trainings from the local Public Health Institute and our open meeting law trainings and tried to learn as much as I can so that I can contribute that to the board. And that's something I pride myself in this year. I've really tried to bring that aspect to the board, make sure that we're able to get through all of our business in a calm manner as possible. And I hope to continue that if reelected.
Thank you. Jamie?
I agree with what both Aaron and Katie said. Being professional and calm and making sure everyone is heard. I did feel like previously there was a kind of shutdown of comments. I do understand that it was emotional and people were, upset. But I do agree with Aaron, and those rules should be followed. I think maybe reminding the public of those rules would be helpful as well. I don't really think I have much more to add than that,
Thank you. Okay, so Aaron, we're going to start with you again. How do you plan to identify any potential or actual conflicts of interest while serving on your board or committee?
Well, conflicts of interest are a luckily something we haven't had to deal with too much on this board. And I think that we as a board are focused on the public health of the town of Abington. With that interest in mind, and with that being what our focus should be the rule and guide of all of our behaviors. So in terms of treating conflicts of interest and how we're going to combat those issues, I think it's a case-by-case basis. What is the conflict, and how can we reorient that behavior to meet the need of the community? Public health at its core is what we're focused on, and if we're not all meeting that mission, then we need to reevaluate our objectives.
Would you mind reading it?
Sure, of course. So how do you plan to identify any potential or actual conflict of interest while serving on your board or committee?
To identify it.
Yeah, how would you identify it?
Well, I mean, I think that we should bring it to light, and like Aaron said, it's kind of hard to answer when you don't know what the conflict actually is, but pointing it out, being clear with everybody on the board and the community, and kind of working together and making the best decision from all avenues. I think it's kind of a hard question to answer.
So I think the question, and I do apologize, Aaron, that I wasn't more clarifying, but this was submitted to the committee of questionnaires over here. I think it's if you have a personal conflict of an issue that's in front of you, if I'm correct with saying that, how would you identify it as a board member? And Aaron, I'll give you some time afterwards if you need to
okay.
address that as well.
Well, I think it should be discussed immediately, and maybe you step out of, personally, if I had a conflict with something, I would try to remove myself if I could. I don't think it would be right to just tuck it in your back pocket, and then, that's not okay. I do not agree with that. You need to just be honest and say that you have the conflict and step back and let the rest of the board do their work.
Thank you. Katie?
You got it. So I think for me, this ties a little bit into the last question, just in relation to respect for others' opinions. Everyone is going to have their own opinion. I will have mine, Jamie will have hers, Aaron will have his. But the important part is to set our own opinions aside, listen to the community, think about what's in the best interest of the community. And on this board, of course, it's going to be what's the best interest for public health, because that would be the ultimate top priority and goal.
Thank you. And Aaron, if you had any...
I just reiterate, it's focusing on the public health of the individual
Okay.
and the community,
Perfect, thank you. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I gave you some time. So next question, I believe, is going to go to Jamie, correct? I think I'm in the same order, right?
I can't remember.
Okay, I believe so. What are your feelings on the current trash collection service? Do you think it's a benefit to the town? Do you want me to repeat it?
No, I just don't really understand it. Do I think trash collection is a benefit to the town?
So the services that we receive right now from that trash collecting services, do you think that's a benefit? What do you think, what are your feelings on the current trash collection service, and do you think it's a benefit to the town?
So I don't know that much about it, be honest. I know that there is issues with tonnage and all of that. I wish I knew more about this, but I don't. But I do know that there is trash issues, and I can't answer whether or not I believe what we currently have is good, but I have ideas on how to maybe reduce it with like compost and reusing recyclables and that kind of stuff. But as far as the direct question, I just can't answer it.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
So for our current trash collection, I know that there have been challenges in the past. I think that the idea of the service that we're having right now, I do support. I've thrown out there, just because this is a new field for me, the trash and recycle bit of it, would it be advantageous for Abington to have our own trash trucks? I think that immediately it would be not very cost effective. Could we team up with other local and surrounding towns to do this? I think just having a new perspective in this one thing, I might be able to throw out new ideas. They may not be perfect, but at least I'm willing to think outside the box. But I think I would support our trash and recycle collection for now, like this method.
Thank you. Aaron?
At the beginning of the last fiscal year, we did switch over our trash hauler to Boston Carting from Republic. Republic Services, we had numerous issues with. There was just constant back and forth between the health department and them about picking up barrels and even just dumping on the part of the trash hauler. So I think just in the last year to see the transition from one hauler to another, that service has certainly improved. They have certainly done a great job of communicating with the health department, and when we have barrels that need to be picked up, they will they communicate that back to us. I know like the drivers that we have in Abington now are the same ones that were providing us the service right before Republic Services they went on strike. So it's wonderful to see that improvement. I think there are some areas we can do better on, especially as a community, in order to improve our own service in terms of increasing recycling and in trash tonnage reduction. But in terms of the service that the hauler provides, I think we're in a much better position than we were, let's say, 3 years ago.
Thank you. Katie, this question is going to start with you. If there is another uptick in COVID cases, would you support the recommendations from, sorry, this card's a little weird, the state officials and local health department to protect the public health?
Oh, that is worded a little bit weird.
Yes.
I think the question is asking, like, if the numbers of COVID ticked up again, would I support,
Local and state recommendations is what I'm...
Yes, so I think my response to this would be, with my nursing background, I'm very science-based, and I would heavily lean on CDC recommendations and guidelines. I think that if we're quick to re-implement masks, then we could be quicker to drop the cases and then no longer need them. I agree with what the two ladies on the school committee, or that were running for the school committee, said, that, we want to keep our kids in schools. But I also think it's very important to protect the kids who cannot be vaccinated, the elderly population, those with comorbidities and autoimmune conditions. So I would say I would heavily lean on the CDC.
Aaron?
We've tried to follow in our recommendations from anything else the Swiss cheese method, and what that is it would take a slice of Swiss cheese. There are holes in it, but as you start to put other slices of Swiss cheese on top of it, those holes will close up. There are many recommendations we can do to mitigate risks, and some of them are appropriate and some of them are not. And we try to use, and I've tried to use in all my determinations of whether we should use certain methods, peer-reviewed studies and, just evidence-based best practices. And that is what we should be basing our decisions on. That's something I'm going to be looking for to determine what methods of risk reduction we should use should those cases rise back up. As we're looking right now, cases are increasing. I think we were at 35 or something today, and our positivity rate is up at 4.5%, which is up 2% from week prior. It's not necessarily getting better, although hospitalizations are down, which is great, but we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and these are things that we're still going to have to be thinking about and looking at those different types of mitigating things that we can do. It just depends on what the circumstance is in the community.
Thank you, Aaron. Jamie?
So I definitely think that we would need more facts and information. I'm not quick to just go with whatever the CDC says. I don't particularly trust in our government at this time. Just because cases are rising, I think we need to know how sick are these people? Are they even sick? Who's been hospitalized? Is it older people? Is it people with comorbidities? Is it children? I think that there's a lot of factors that need to be looked at for this. I would definitely be questioning what the CDC is recommending and what's happening in our own community. So the quick answer is no, I wouldn't just be okay with whatever the CDC says. But I do agree with both Katie and Aaron that we need to do what we need to do to keep the community safe. So I wouldn't be like, hell no, but I would want a lot more information, data, before making a decision like that.
Thank you. Okay, so I think 2 minutes? Okay. So we do have enough time for 2 more questions, which is good. So Katie, I believe it's starting with you, right? Nope, Aaron.
Aaron,
Okay. I was looking down the list. So our trash and recycling costs are the same. Recycling cost is increasing dramatically. How would you work to reduce the cost of recycling?
Well, I think there's three things we can do to reduce these costs. The first thing is opening up the compost site to having more things available to, like, we can collect there. As part of our recycling dividends program grant, we do get points if we have a center for hard to recycle materials. So being able to collect most of the things on that list will help us achieve some more funding out of there, on top of the fact that that'll be coming out of the trash stream. I've even been talking to the health department about, like, taking tires, for example. That's something I hope we'll be doing soon. But looking for avenues, for example, that way we were looking to partner with Plymouth County Mosquito Control to take tires. It's a unique way of trying to find the resources available and take them out of our trash stream. It's someplace you wouldn't think to look. Another part is education. Education's really important if we want to change our trash and recycling habits. Again, we get points as part of our RDP grant if we're putting out recycling education videos, for example. And we partnered with, prior to the pandemic, the Abington CAM in order to do videos on Triple E and Lyme disease. We need to reutilize that relationship. I think that's really, really important for us to provide these types of materials. Lastly, hiring a recycling education compliance officer is going to be really, really important. That's a role that it really hasn't been filled in quite a few months, and something that if we have that role filled, there's somebody out there making sure that people are recycling properly and encouraging residents to recycle properly and making sure they're following the regulations that we've set in place for that behavior. So I think those are three ways we can kind of reduce those costs, and I think there's even a lot more into those three methods that we can use to achieve that same goal.
Thank you, Aaron. Jamie?
I agree with Aaron on educating people on it too, for sure, because I know that there's a lot of things that I thought could be recycled but actually can't. I really like the idea of finding creative ways to reuse recyclable items and getting the kids involved in to all the grade levels and having them come up with some ideas too to help them feel like they're involved too and get them thinking about it more. And then maybe when they see these educational videos or posts or whatever it is that we would put out, they would get a little bit more excited about it because they're doing it too, which might then, go into their families, and their parents who might not think much about it. Those are my ideas.
Katie?
I agree with both Aaron and Jamie. I think education and promotion are going to be two really key ways for reducing our tonnage and therefore improving our recycling and garbage. I know that textiles for me is not something that quickly comes to mind when you think about recycling. You think about cans and bottles, cardboard, but the textiles for me, that was new. And come November, I believe, you're no longer going to be able to put your textiles in the trash. So figuring out ways to tackle that problem will be, on the forefront of my mind. My family uses the pink bags, so we have a lot of those that I need to, schedule a pickup with from spring cleaning. I also recently learned that the textile bins next to the library and I think Beaverbrook has one. I think one of the other schools has one, but the proceeds from those directly go back to the schools, which is amazing. Like, that's a win-win. If those start filling up, I would want to get more. And then, decreasing single-use items, that's also going to help reduce the bulk of the recycling that we have now. Like a lot single-use water bottles, it's troublesome. My kids and I were actually just over doing some cleanup behind the high school, and you wouldn't believe the obscene amount of plastic water bottles that we picked up back there. So if we're encouraging our kids to take a reusable water bottle to their sports practice, it would make such a big difference. So I'd be a huge advocate for education and promotion, because I think multiple small changes, if they're implemented in the community, can make big change.
Thank you. So this is the final question. Jamie's going to start with you. What would you do to increase recycling? And I feel like that's just another question that was already asked and answered. So that is the final question. Thank you, my questionnaire committee over here for doing that. So now we're going to give closing. Now we're going to give closing statements. Jamie, we're going to start with you, then Katie, and then with Aaron.
Okay.
Thank you.
So be quick. Different opinions make for a better decision because the matter is explored by various avenues or angles. I saw a quote recently that perfectly describes my reasoning for wanting to run for the seat. The quote's from a journalist named James Sorowiecki. I probably butchered that. Diversity and independence are important because the best collective decisions are the product of disagreement and contest, not consensus and compromise. Thank you.
For me, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who came out this evening, taking your time to get to know the candidates. You must care about your town just like me. And I hope I will have earned one of your 2 votes on April 30th. Please vote Van Nest.
You know, when I sat up here 3 years ago, I talked about being the 12-year-old kid building pillow forts and watching town meeting. And while I still do that, I've grown a lot in those past 3 years, and I've learned a lot. And I'm continuing to learn more because I care about this community. This is the place that I grew up, and I want to make it a better place as I continue to grow up. So I hope that my experience, my background, and the time that I've spent these past 3 years, and the fact that I am committed to being an enthusiastic member of this board will help guide you in choosing your votes for April 30th, and I hope that I am one of your 2 votes on April 30th.
Thank you. Thank you to candidates. So up next, we're going to have Clay Kelly. He's a Board of Health candidate, but he's the Board of Health candidate for the 2-year term. Thank you, Clay. So Clay, it's just you. So you get an opening statement, then I'm going to ask you probably roughly the same questions that were previously asked at the board.
Got it. Okay. Nice to see everyone here tonight. So my name is Clay Kelly. I moved to Abington with my wife and our 1 child at the time, 3 years ago. We now have a new daughter, so she's about 9 months old. And, you know, the question that Allison sent in the email or said that was going to be asked was, why run? And, you know, to me, it comes down to 2 things. The first thing is just doing my part. I think local government is an excellent way to help uphold and maintain democracy overall. I think it's a really nice way to do it. I get to meet new people. I get to help make decisions that affect everyone. And I get to hear, as a lot of people have been saying up here, differing viewpoints, which I think is incredibly important. The other thing is a contract. So I really look at local government and government in general as a contract between the people that it's supposed to serve. I don't know how many people in here are married, but marriage is a type of contract, I think. And one thing that's important about that is it's literally impossible to be married and win every single argument you would like to win. But if they work well, I think actually, you know, at least you're heard. At least your side is heard, and then you make a decision. You decide to go through this thing we call life together because you decided that doing it together was going to be easier or at least more productive than doing it by yourself. I think government's the same way. It's not perfect, but at least it's, you know, a little adventure, and we all get to go on it, and we all get to get heard in the process. And I think that's one of the things that's been contentious over the last couple of years, understandably. And so, you know, I hope to kind of bring a sense of openness and transparency to the board that some people in the town may not feel has been there.
Oh, perfect. Perfect timing. You must have practiced.
Nope. Nope. Totally off the cuff.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you for that. Your first question is going to be, our trash and recycling costs are the same. Recycling costs is increasing dramatically. How would you work to reduce the cost of recycling?
So being on the Board of Health would be an entirely new role for me. There's a lot I have to learn, and there's a lot of actions I'm taking to do that. Public Health Institute, online training, stuff like that. For me personally, not having a lot of knowledge on the trash and recycling issues, as a member of the board, I would really lean heavily on the prior experience of people who have been here a while, that know a little bit more about it, and then using my communication skills, my openness to hear from the community, businesses, residents, what they think might be best as well, and then just moving forward with the board together on a decision on that. But it's not something I'm an expert in. However, I will be diving into that more over the next couple of months.
Perfect, thank you. So if there is another uptick in COVID cases, would you support the recommendations that come down from either the federal government, the state government, or local government?
So like Katie was saying, I have a science background. I'm a biology major. I'm certainly not an epidemiologist. I'm not a virologist. And I think this thing, COVID, that we haven't seen in over 100 years, something like it, has been a learning experience for all of us. I do generally support CDC guidelines. However, I do think there's something to be said for taking into account other factors that the CDC may not necessarily in some of their guidance. So mental health with children has been discussed here. I think that's highly important. I think there is a lot of emotion behind these topics, and I think that's to be considered as well. You know, it's not always necessarily the numbers that matter, although as an evidence-based person, I definitely, you know, rely on that. But I also rely on the other aspects of society and psychology and emotion and things that are also important. So the answer is maybe.
Perfect, thank you. In recent months, we've seen local officials come under fire during board meetings. How would you balance a right to free speech and the running of an effective, legal, and efficient meeting?
Yeah, so free speech, I mean, to me is obviously a foundation of our Constitution, of our government, of our society. But I also don't think it can truly be free if arguments can't be had. To me, there's a difference between an argument and a fight, though. And I think everyone knows that difference. But kind of like Jamie was saying earlier with her quote, you know, ideas aren't really that great if they're not tested over time, if they're not constantly reviewed. I mean, democracy is kind of like a car. Very nice and shiny and new in the beginning, but it's going to take maintenance over time, otherwise it's not going to work. So, you know, openness, transparency, all these words that we've been saying tonight are highly important to me. And so I think that should just always be supported and views should always be heard. Again, part of this contract I was talking about, it's also up to the people of Abington to remember that although they are heard, they may not always get their way. Not every single person is going to get their way. And I think it's the board's job to really take all of that into account and try to make the best decision that we can and, you know, see how it goes. And if it's not working so well, we change it.
Thank you. Are you in favor of the state's plan to impose a 5-cent deposit on water and bottle nips? Sorry, nip bottles.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. I agree with the idea that banning them kind of pushes the problem to outside towns. I don't like seeing them on my street all the time. I do enjoy a nip every now and then, but you know, I'd be willing to pay the 5-cent deposit in order to experience that. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's sensible. And I think like anything else, if we want to solve some problems, sometimes we have to pay for it.
Thank you. If elected, what would be your top priority?
My top priority, again, is just to make sure that everyone feels as though they are heard. And you know, my background in my career is in enterprise software sales. I'm not really going to bother explaining that because it just draws a blank every time. But what it does mean is that I have to work with groups of dozens of people every single day to try to bring consensus on something that not everybody agrees to. And usually it takes weeks, usually it takes months, sometimes years in order to get that. But what it does mean is that everybody is heard. It does mean that discussion is had. And it does mean, again, that not every single person gets their way, but in the end, we all agree that something needs to be done. So, you know, my top priority is to make sure that everyone's heard, but we all are together to make sure that we're moving forward. Because if we're not, then we're staying in the same place. And to me, that's just as good as going backwards.
Thank you. What are your feelings on the current trash collection service, and do you think it's a benefit to the town?
I never imagined I'd be talking about trash so much in one single night, but apparently it's a big problem. Again, kind of like some of the other issues, you know, that's something that I will have to do more research on as well as to why that's such a challenge, although I think Aaron outlined it pretty well, what the challenges are. So again, that's me leaning on the board and their experience and people of the town and their experience to really figure out what the solution to that is. So in my job, when I'm asked a question that I don't fully know the answer to, my answer is I will look into that and I will get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you. And how do you plan to identify any potential or actual conflicts of interest while serving on your board or committee?
I was listening to that when I was sitting there, and I don't think I fully understood the question the first time. So are you asking about my own personal?
So if you had a
conflicts of interest?
personal conflict of interest, how would you address it while serving on your board or committee?
You know, the easiest thing to do is just to recuse myself from any conversations, any decisions, any meetings, anything that has anything to do with that. That's easy enough for me. I don't think I would have any, but you know, if someone pointed one out, step away.
Okay, thank you. Well, those are all the questions we have for you, so you'll get a 2-minute closer.
Yeah, I don't really have much of a closer prepared, to be very honest. You know, this is a new experience for me, but again, being involved on the board, getting to meet people, getting to listen to different points of view is something that I truly enjoy. If I didn't, I would be terrible at my job and I'd be doing something else. But, you know, at the same time, my goal is to make sure that everybody's heard. I think at the very least, at a national level, we've kind of become accustomed to throwing up walls every time someone doesn't agree with us and getting very defensive, if not aggressive and angry. That's not going to get us anywhere. I think we all know that. And moreover, that takes a lot of energy that we probably don't have after the last couple of years. What we'd probably all rather be doing is getting back to the business of, you know, improving trash situations, which apparently is really bad. But also making sure that as we move out of this pandemic, wherever we're going with it, you know, we're doing it together. And that we're all being heard, and that we can have an argument every now and then and not have it be a big deal, and then make sure we can reach some kind of productive decision out of it. I think that's something that we should all be shooting for. I think we do it inside of our own homes, so we should be doing it out in public too.
Thank you. Up next, we're going to have Planning Board. Michelle Kearney, Richard Shepard, and John Warner, if he's here. I'm not sure if John's here. So Michelle, you'll sit first, and then Richard will be next. Okay, so we'll start with you, Michelle, and you'll be able to give a 2-minute opener, and then Richard, you'll be second.
Well, I want to, excuse me, thank the Republican Town Committee for organizing and hosting this event. I think it's a great opportunity for the residents to get a better understanding of the candidates and their views and beliefs. My name is Michelle Kearney. I'm a lifelong resident of Abington. I grew up here, went through the schools. I graduated Abington High in 2008. I went to Quincy College, majored in paralegal studies, then went on to Suffolk and majored in applied legal studies. After college, I began working as a paralegal. I think that has given me experience and skill set that would be an asset as a member of the board. I've learned to be thoughtful, analytical, consider a range of possibilities, not afraid to ask tough questions. They don't always have to be the favorable. You know, I want to get more involved with the town, bring some change, new ideas, fresh perspectives, and do what I can to give back to the community.
Thank you. And Richard, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, and thanks to the Republican Town Committee for sponsoring the candidates forum tonight. My wife and I have been homeowners here in Abington for about 40 years, and our children were raised here and put through the Abington public school system. And that served them very well in their careers and their lives. My mother was a lifelong Abingtonian. Grandparents came here close to 100 years ago. My wife was a lifelong Abingtonian and was an administrative assistant in the Woodsdale School for more than 30 years. So anybody who passed through the Woodsdale,
Myself included.
yourself included, probably was aware of Mrs. Shepherd's presence. So our roots here in town are very deep. If I am elected to the board, this will be my second tour of duty. Years ago, I served on the planning board for 7 years, and that was when town sewerage had been put into a section of town up off of Hancock Street, and all of the subdivisions that are there today had not yet been developed. That was a very hectic time in the life of the town. Subdivision plans were coming in fast and furious, and it was a very busy 7 years. I had the great privilege and honor of serving with Mr. Wayne Smith during those 7 years, and he's instrumental in my decision to seek this planning board seat. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank him for his service to the town, because I left the board a long time ago. He never did. After that, I served a couple of years on the Board of Assessors with Joe Shea. Also had the great honor of serving with him, and learned a lot about the tax base and revenue of the town. I am the past president and treasurer of the Abington Rotary Club, a service organization that's been here in town since 1942, and a past president and treasurer of the Abington Pickleball Association. And for those of you who may have no idea what that is, then you can visit the courts up behind the senior center anytime and watch the game.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have you seating in order of the way you're going to be on the ballot. We're going to start with you, Michelle, for the first question. Why are you running for planning board?
Like I mentioned, I want to get more involved in the community and give back. Growing up here for the last 32 years, things are a lot different now than they were when I was growing up, There's been a lot of developments, and pretty much I think, like everything in life, there's always room for improvement. I think, in my opinion, some things could be done better. Developments could be more thought out and deliberate. I'm just trying to be the change I want to see, I guess.
Thank you. And Richard, the question's for you as well. Why are you running for planning board?
Well, I agree that there's a lot going on in town, and there's going to be a lot more coming our way over the course of the next several years. I think that we are faced with a lot of multifamily development in town. Right now, we've got a 40B application that's going through the comprehensive permit process up off of Summer Street. And there is a change to the state zoning act called Section 3A that you're probably very familiar with, that is potentially going to create a lot more multifamily development in town, potentially up to 1,000 units. There's all of the things that are going on up at the air base at Union Point. That will be coming up in the course of the next several years. So this seat is a 5-year term. So the challenges that are going to be presented to the town for Section 3A, for the base, are things that whoever is elected to this seat will be very much involved with. And so I've retired a few years back. I have the time. and the energy to dedicate to those efforts, and look forward to the challenge.
Thank you. Second question, we'll start with you, is what is the biggest challenge facing the planning board over the next 3 years? And thoughts about tree preservation on lots and how to approach it? It's a two-part question.
Okay. Two different parts.
Yes. Could have been on 2 different cards too, but they were on the same card. Got to give it to a nice applause to our question committee over here. Let's start with the first question. What is the biggest challenge facing the planning board over the next 3 years?
I think, well, I mentioned the challenges that are going to be presented to us as a result of Section 3A, the challenges that are going to be facing us in terms of what we are going to do with our part of Union Point. The principal responsibility of the planning board is to provide oversight and guidance in the execution of our master plan. So Abington's master plan has laid out a number of strategies and implementation efforts on how we might move the community forward, defined roughly as short-term, medium-term, and long-term objectives. And they cover a whole host of topics that are intended to govern land use and economic development and open space and a whole host of important considerations. So I think that we need to get, I think we as, not only as a planning board, but for all the boards and officials in town, we kind of need to get back to the master plan. It was updated in 2019, but that was the point at which the pandemic rolled into the world. And so I don't think in many areas we've been able to make a lot of progress, but I think we need to come back to it because it's intended to help us prioritize what it is we want to do in the planning of the town and how we're going to go about doing it.
Thank you.
And the other part was about trees.
Yeah, I think we're going to skip over that part right
All
now.
right,
We're just going to go, we're going to follow the first question.
The biggest challenge?
Yes, what is the biggest challenge facing the planning board over the next 3 years?
I think the biggest challenge would be establishing and maintaining a healthy balance between growth and development, the wants and needs of the community and residents, and the environmental impacts of those. It's costly to operate a town, and it's forever increasing like everything else. So we need development. It's inevitable, but it can be done with careful consideration and thought put into it. I think in terms of development, we should first consider looking to what's already available. We should revitalize empty storefronts, blighted properties throughout the town. For example, on Route 18, the old Eclectic Collection store, that's being redeveloped, and I believe it's going to turn into a full care dental service or dental office. Bemis in North Abington, that I believe is on the market. That would be a great way to start revitalizing North Abington Center. The Mary Lou's and the normal Abington Center, same thing. I think though, like if it's well thought out and planned and we do it well, we can achieve multiple goals at once. We can increase our tax base from businesses. We can attract small businesses and make it more appealing. Encourage like small mom and pop stores to want to come and put their business in Abington. I know a lot of communities rely on income from those. And we can also do this while having minimal impact on the residents of the town in general, but also, well, more importantly, the ones in the immediate area. And we can do this while preserving our open space, vegetation, and wetlands. So if we revitalize what we have, it'll achieve multiple goals. We'll have growth and development, but we'll also minimize using undeveloped land at this point.
Thank you. Okay, so Michelle, we're going to start with you. What do you see is the role of the planning board when it comes to public safety on Abington property and private or commercial properties?
I don't think that as far as private commercial properties, is that what you said?
What do you see as the role of the Abington Planning Board when it comes to public safety on Abington property and private or commercial properties?
I don't think that the planning board has enough of a role, to be honest. I think that we should, we need more enforcement, better enforcement. I think, for example, Randolph, when you sign an application for a site plan or a permit, you're authorizing them to conduct site visits. And whether that be immediately or in the near future or both to ensure compliance and whatnot with the conditions in site plan, you're giving them the authority to do that. And I think that would be great. That would have a huge impact on safety. It would help prevent another incident like on North Quincy Street. But I don't think we have enough of a role, the planning board, not we. I don't think they have enough of a role. I think they could give themselves a little bit more leeway in that respect.
Thank you. And Richard, do you need me to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay. What do you see as the role of the planning board when it comes to public safety on Abington property and private or commercial properties?
Yeah, I would agree that the planning board, as it pertains to public property and perhaps to a lesser extent private, it doesn't have a direct role in ongoing public safety. So planning and zoning, both when a site plan review is conducted, questions relative to safety as they pertain to police, fire, are things that become a part of the site plan review process. And you'll oftentimes see the fire chief or somebody from the police department come in and weigh in. They receive copies of those plans, and they're charged with reviewing them along with other town boards and providing feedback pursuant to public safety. So those things are kind of baked into the review process, hopefully. But once the plan is approved and whatever development happens, then it is no longer a function of the planning board. I think it might go more to zoning compliance. If there are uses of a property that are not conforming, then certainly the zoning officer could step in at that point if they represented a concern about public safety.
Thank you. So at the last town meeting, there was discussion around a Muppet district off of Chestnut Street. What are your thoughts on the growing facilities over there and the rezoning that was put forth at the town meeting? I believe it was changed to, yes, you'll start.
Yeah.
I believe it was the change to the acreage and the frontage.
Yeah, so that article spoke, there's the existing Muppet zone, and that article spoke to creating a marijuana overlay district specifically for cultivation. And it was a spirited conversation. Which was helpful. That item ended up getting referred back to the planning board with no action taken. For those who may not be familiar with it, it was an article that, as you say, created lot size and frontage size requirements for any marijuana cultivation operation that would not involve retail. And that particular item, I think it was, in my opinion, I think it was appropriate to go back to the planning board because there were some questions that were raised on town meeting floor that indicated that there were some things there that needed to be thought through a little bit more carefully. And it was a complicated article, a complicated zoning change. I think that the one other observation that I had on that was that when zoning article like that is placed before the town, it's preceded by consideration at the board meetings and by public hearings. And what struck me was that there may have been some flaw with the public hearing process, because I don't think that there was enough information about what was being proposed to the electorate in general. And I think the planning board, and probably all boards, can probably do a little bit better job in making sure that people are aware of the public hearings and have an opportunity to participate in those, and hopefully get some of the questions answered in that forum rather than trying to do it live in real time on the public meeting, town meeting floor.
Thank you. Michelle?
Well, I want to start and say I'm not against grow facilities or pot shops in town. They have the potential to bring up a significant amount of revenue. But as far as Chestnut Street goes, that could be a good location to create a new overlay district for the cultivation of marijuana. But in my opinion, we already have an overlay district where the cultivation would be permitted. It touches on Route 58 and I think the other side of Route 18. And there's a lot of underutilized land in that area. I think, the decision shouldn't be rushed. We should take time and carefully and deliberately decide on where the best or most advantageous location is. I know on Route 58 where Wayne's Sleep Shop is, that's being revitalized, redeveloped. That will become a marijuana store, and they plan to, in the next few years, put a grow facility in the buildings behind it. If we're going to have one, why not try and keep them all in the same area? There's a lot of land between Route 18 and Route 58 that, driving by today, there's just piles of dirt and empty space. I think we should, before creating a new separate one on Chestnut Street, explore that area some more.
Thank you. All right, Michelle, this question, we're going to start with you. The planning board does not have a full-time town planner. How do you feel about the position? How would you work with the town planner?
I think the idea of a town planner is great. Their main focus is to do just that, plan for the town. That's their expertise. They're knowledgeable, well, they would be knowledgeable in the needs of the community, the issues, potential problems, come up with solutions. I think having a full-time town planner would be very beneficial. They would help develop, help us develop the master plan. I know it was updated in 2019, but that was done by the members of the planning board. Nothing wrong with that, but they meet once a month and their focus is they have a lot going on. So I think a town planner is great. Determine the most beneficial uses for land, most advantageous locations. And I think I believe we have an assistant town planner, but a full-time one with that being their main focus, I think the planning board and the town planner would work very well together.
Thank you. Richard, the question's also for you. If you need me to repeat it, I can.
Nope. Yeah, I think if you go back to the master plan, the update in 2019 did involve a third party, so that was farmed out to a third party for a fee, so the planning board did get assistance on that. And the master plan does definitely call for a planner, for a town planner, and suggests that that is something that is necessary for the town to be considering. We talk a lot about how we might revitalize the business districts, Abington Center, North Abington Center. We talk a lot about the different kinds of development that are going on in town. And the planning board can have, or any board can have, opinions or thoughts about what we might like to see. But there's a lot of work that has to go into that to make that happen. What the town may like to see is the town's going to end up reacting more to developers and what they want to build than what we necessarily want to see. So the master plan does call for a town planner, expertise in business development, knowledge and familiarity in state financing and incentive programs, with contacts in development organizations such as Southeastern Economic Development Corporation, Mass Office of Business Development, et cetera, et cetera. So it's knowledge of the business community, knowledge of the grant process, how you provide tax incentives to businesses. The end result is you want to attract the type of development that you want into town, and I think that is a full-time job, and I think the assistant town planner Liz Shea does a great job with that. But it's a big job, and I think that Abington has had a crack at a town planner in the past with mixed success, but it's definitely something that we should look at again. However, that's something that the town has to be bought into, because the town has to be willing to pay that salary.
Thank you.
Somebody with that kind of expertise probably isn't going to work cheap.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support 40B housing in general? Yes. Sorry.
Affordable housing, sure, absolutely. I'm not a big fan of the 40B process, of the comprehensive permit process, because I think it does circumvent some of the ability of the local boards to weigh in and enforce our rules and regulations. But the notion of affordable housing certainly is something that it's a problem everywhere, and I think that town of Abington is approaching it in different ways. It is something that's called out in the master plan, that it's something that Abington needs to be concerned about. The One Summer Street project that's in mid-flight in the comprehensive permit processing will be some part affordable housing. I know that we have a committee that's helping to manage the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that's doing a lot of good work in that area. Everybody probably is aware that as taxpayers you pay into the Community Preservation Act. 1.5%, I think it is, that Abington levies, and that goes into a general fund. Well, 10% of that every year comes back out in support of affordable funding, where the trust fund gets some of its funding from. And so there are things that are being done, but certainly more, particularly in the current environment where housing has become so expensive, and first-time buyers in a town like Abington, it becomes really difficult, and seniors becomes really difficult to stay in town. So do I support 40B? I support the intent, but I'm not keen on the implementation of it.
Thank you. Michelle?
I understand affordable housing is a necessity, but generally speaking, I'm not a supporter of 40B. It's basically a free pass for developers. They get a streamlined permitting process, and they don't have to conform to zoning requirements. A development that would be otherwise unbuildable is allowed because it's 40B. I mean, Abington, I believe, is only a few units short of meeting the requirement. So rather than a large development on Summer Street where only a number of the units will be part of the 40B affordable housing, I think we should look to develop the required number that we need, look at different locations, especially if in the next few years we're going to have to start developing multifamily units elsewhere in town. But for example, North School, I know the building itself isn't viable, but the location, that would tear down the building, redevelop it. It's close to Abington Center, North Abington Center. If we work on revitalizing that, and we can encourage small businesses. It would encourage people to go there and shop local and, again, create revenue for the town. But yeah, generally speaking, I don't support 40B. But I understand that there's requirements that have to be met, so I think that should be a carefully thought out decision and not just a large development with only a small number of units being affordable, I guess.
Thank you. All right, so Christian, we'll start with you. How do you plan to identify any potential or actual conflicts of interest while serving on your board or committee?
And this is
personal-
to you personally?
Yes.
Obviously, I would recuse myself. I think that it's required, but even if I realized there was a potential for a conflict of interest, I would ask someone like, hey, this is the situation. Should I recuse myself or am I good? Or get a few different opinions if I wasn't sure. But I would definitely recuse myself if I either knew someone submitting an application or had an interest in the property or business or if I was in a butter. But yeah, definitely recuse myself.
Same question for you as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree that if there's any conflict, then certainly the correct course of action is for a sitting board member to recuse themselves from that. And where there may be gray areas about whether that is required or not, that's a question that typically is going to go to town council. It's obviously a very important consideration, because if you come down on the wrong side of that, then a decision of the planning board can be called into question and potentially overturned. Even the deliberations of the board can be called into question and potentially overturned. So it's a sensitive topic that has to be addressed very carefully. I don't have any conflicts of interest and don't expect to.
Thank you. So final question, and I'll start with you, Richard. What do you see as the planning board's role in development of the former South Weymouth Naval Air Base?
The planning board and other boards are going to, conservation, zoning, are all going to have to work closely together with the master developer of Union Point. I think it's Brookfield Properties. That, as most people probably know, that the development that's happened over there has kind of gone in fits and starts. And it is, there's some construction that's still happening, but that's what is left over from the prior developer, and that will soon be completed. So Brookfield, I believe, is supposed to put its development plan, not only for the Abington parcel, but for the Union Point in general, back on the table this summer. That will initiate conversations with boards like the planning board about how we are reacting to the plan that they've put onto the table, what we may then want to see done or not done. There are issues with our parcel, infrastructure costs related to water and sewerage that we don't really have an answer for today. Those connections don't exist, but our representative on the Southfield development, Kevin Donovan, had refinanced the bond, and there's a $4 million set-aside in place today specifically for infrastructure improvements. So that's good news for the town, is that there's some money in the till that we can use to help develop the property. But I expect that's something that's going to take probably several years to kind of work itself out in terms of what they're proposing and what we want to see. But again, this is a 5-year term. So the person who's elected to the planning board now will be in the middle of that discussion over the course of the next 5 years.
Thank you. Michelle?
The planning board's role, they're obviously going to have to develop the plan, no. But they're gonna have to work closely with, like he said, the zoning board of appeals, conservation, and the other committees and departments and boards within the town, and, explore what would be the best possible development for that. I believe the selectmen are looking to appoint a member to, I want to say the Tri-Town Committee, I forget exactly what it's called. They're looking to appoint someone to that so we can get more involved with the development. We'll obviously have to work closely together with Rockland and Weymouth, but I think that their role will be to help determine what the best use of the area will be, listen to the residents, see what their thoughts are, what they would want there, and just I'm drawing a blank, I'm so sorry.
fine.
But just help develop it or plan for the development in the best way, most advantageous manner for the town.
Thank you. So that's it for the final questions. Richard, you'll be able to give your final closing statement for 2 minutes, and then followed by Michelle.
Okay, thanks you again for the opportunity to speak with the town residents tonight. As I stated at the outset, I think we've got some real opportunities, but some real challenges on the horizon over the course of the next 5 years. I mentioned Section 3A a few times, and I don't mean to harp on that, but I think generally people don't understand the significance of what that legislation created. We're going to have to establish a 50-acre multifamily zoning district around our train station in Abington. And the state, the Department of Housing and Community Development has indicated that upwards of about 1,000 units could be developed in that 50-acre parcel. We talked a little bit before about 40B and affordable housing, and that's not a fixed number. So we have developers coming in and proposing 40B projects under the comprehensive permit process. And we may achieve 10% of affordable housing and kind of get out from under 40B. You put 1,000 units into a district around the train station, you're right back where you started with 40B. So this thing kind of feeds on itself. And again, the legislation that we're provided or mandated really puts the board's planning, zoning, however it may be, at a disadvantage in terms of their negotiations with the developers, because they can comply up to a certain point, but then they can decide that they don't want to comply with something, and they have the alternative to go back to the state, and the state has the authority to say, you're right, you should be able to do what you want, go ahead and do it. Talked a little bit about the Union Point, and that's going to be huge over the next few years in terms of kind of what happens up there. And I look forward to working with the other town boards and the officials to kind of help guide us through these next few years with, again, using the Abington's master plan as our guideline, which is what it's intended to do.
Thank you. Michelle?
I've probably said this enough, but I think it's important to focus on revitalizing, redeveloping what we have available before we go developing on undeveloped land. We shouldn't be afraid, the planning board shouldn't be afraid to say no to applications or ask an applicant to come back with some improvements or changes that would be in the better interest of the town. Decisions should be well thought out, carefully considered, not just consider the short-term ramifications, but also the long-term effects. I wouldn't be afraid to, I would look at an application as if as if the development was going in my backyard or your backyard, you know? Really look at how it impacts the surrounding areas. There's a lot more to the planning board. The obviously developments of Union Point and the 3A, which is, it's confusing state mandate, because the guidelines at this point, they're only a draft or preliminary, so there's a lot that still has to be answered about that, for like the location of the district and whatnot. But I just, I want to give back to the community, bring fresh ideas, new perspective, and my experience and skills, I think, would be an asset as a member to the board. And I would hope some residents share my views, and I would be honored if they voted to elect me as the member of the planning board.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think that concludes our candidates night hosted by the Republican Town Committee. I don't see anyone else in the audience that is running for office. I just want to quickly go over what you saw here tonight. We did ask gave all the opportunity to the candidates on the ballot of the 2022 ballot for the town election. I'm just going to quickly go over those ballots. Is going to be the Board of Selectmen. Kevin DiMaggio is listed on that ballot. Assessors, there's Ann Welch, who's listed on that. She unfortunately wasn't able to be here tonight. The Board of Public Health, which is Aaron Christian, Jamie Pinola, right? And then Katie Van Est, and there is 2 votes on that. The Board of Public Health for a 1-year term, Lisa Bezanson, unfortunately she wasn't able to be here tonight. And then there's another Board of Public Health for a 2-year term, which you saw was Clay Kelly. And then we have the Trustees of Public Library. It's a 3-year term. There's vote for 3. There's Carolyn Gorham Murray, Gerald Haas, and Laura Brink. And then School Committee, there's a 3-year term. You're only allowed to vote for 1. We have Danielle Grafton and Nicole Emery. Sewer Commission for a 3-year term, you vote for 2. Michael Donovan Sr. is listed on there. Sewer Commission, 1-year term, the vote for 1. William Cormier Jr. is listed. Water Commissioner for 3-year term, you vote for 1, John Tasnari. Unfortunately, those 3 were unable to be here tonight. Planning Board for 5-year term, you only allowed to vote for 1, and we had 2 of the listed candidates up here tonight, and John Warren II wasn't able to be here tonight. And then we have Housing Authority for a 5-year term, you vote for 1, and it's Wayne Crothers for re-election. And thank you all for coming tonight, and it was an honor to be the moderator of our candidates night. I think it went very well. It gave us an opportunity to see and hear from the candidates that we'll be voting for on, like I said, April 30th from 8 to 6 at the Beaver Brook School. Thank you.